Welcome to another broadcast of the Debra Rufini Show on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. And now, from England, here she is, your host, Debra Rufini.
Greetings from England. This is Debra Rufini with another edition of the Debra Rufini Show. And it's just going to be me today because I am hopping mad. And I just need, this is not just to get something off my chest, but is something that is very important that I think we need to get the message out there. And yeah, I'm going to keep it together. I am going to keep it together because justice is going to be done about this particular thing that is going on in my life at the moment. And I want to share this with you in case anyone else is going through a similar thing. Don't keep quiet. Speak to someone. Get justice if you need justice to be done. You may have twigged by now that I am quite passionate about domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, spiritual abuse, any kind of bullying, any kind of abuse. It makes me see red. And I think it was the guest before last, maybe the one before that, I had the brilliant Nancy Little on my show, who was speaking about her awful time she had, her life with her mother, and unbelievable things, because you don't expect dreadful, despicable abuse to happen from mum. Your mum is the person who's brought you into the world. Your mother's supposed to be your nurturer, your carer, and unfortunately Nancy did not have this relationship with her mum. And I feel very much for Nancy in her situation, and I thought I would bring my own. I mean, I haven't had anything like what Nancy has gone through, by the grace of God. But I just thought it would be an opportunity for me to talk about my situation, because part of what Nancy was saying was that she, I don't know about it wasn't taken seriously, but it wasn't picked up on, that people were saying, but mothers don't do that to their children. You know, a mother wouldn't do that. If it's a father, a father should still be daddy figure and the carer. But I do think it's taken more seriously if it's a member of, if you're female and it's a member of the opposite sex doing something untoward. It's taken a lot more seriously than if it was a same-gendered person, especially a mother. So, not only did Nancy go through this horrific thing, but she had a hard time trying to get listened to that, it was your mother doing it. I have a brilliant relationship with my mum. She's amazing. My best friend and my mum and dad are my best friends. And they're supporting me in this. And in their 80s, they shouldn't have to. Whew, okay, so I'm going to be talking about my own horror story that has been going on for just over a year, and it's just reared its ugly head again just when things were about to be getting better. And it's really important to address the whole issue of female to female abuse. It's not something you hear about. It just isn't out there. And a couple of nights ago, I was in a very, very desperate place. I didn't want to be here anymore. I'd had enough. And I was just Googling for any help I could find. And I could not find one organisation or helpline for women who abuse women. Maybe Nancy and I ought to I haven't spoken to her about this yet, but maybe her and I ought to get together and try and get something running here, because this is crazy. That, this is, abuse is awful, whatever gender, but, there's nothing specifically out there to help women who abuse women. I have always been same-sex attracted, which is a great shame, because in my experience, I would trust a man far more than I would trust a woman. I haven't had good experience with same-sex relationships, and in my experience, women have certainly not been the gentler sex. But I mean, this last thing was just taking the biscuit, really. So I'm gonna talk you through the thing that happened to me. So this was over a year ago. This was last February to May 2018. And blimmin' dating sites. Maybe this is God's way of saying, Deborah, don't steer clear of women anyway, but certainly don't do dating sites. So I had got in contact with someone who seemed really nice, and that was the thing for me, that I've never had nice experience before of relationships. They've always been quite, they haven't always been horrible, but they haven't been brilliant, let's put it that way. But this person was ultra charming, to the point of almost like too good to be true. And incidentally, my talk I gave back last year about narcissistic abuse, and I mentioned my 3 scenarios. The person I'm referring to is Jay, the very last person I mentioned in the talk. But I'm going to, and the least amount of time was spent on Jay, but there's been a lot happening since then, and I just thought, no, let's get this message out there that women abuse women, as well as men abusing women and men abusing men. So this person, the nicest person on the planet, really friendly. I'm drawn to friendly people anyway, because I think, there's a lot of misery in the world, and just even if you're getting served in a shop, and you can see the cashiers having a hard day, that you can see their face light up when you get a pleasant customer and things like that. So I do think a smile goes a long way. But there was something, and we can look back in hindsight with the red flags. But at the time, it's like a little bit of a red flag. Maybe it's just me. Bigger red flag still. How many red flags are we going to ignore before we actually think, right, this is not good? So, the charm was almost superficial. It was so full on. But nevertheless, she seemed really friendly. So, let's maybe it's just me. Let's go along with this. So time went on, and at the time, I didn't know anything about narcissistic personality disorder. I'd heard about it, and I just thought a narcissist was, I don't know, just because it sounds like nasty. Is it just a mean person? I had no idea that it meant someone who had a massive ego, a sense of entitlement, grandiosity, always having to have your own way, throwing tantrums if they didn't get their own way, punishing by means of silent treatment, etc. I didn't know anything about any of this. So when these things are going on, you just think, and they're very good manipulators as well, so you just think, there's a problem with me, because they're telling me there's a problem with me. And they're so influential, they can never, ever be wrong about anything. So you just have to go along with them, and if you disagree with them or break any of their rules, it's just not worth it. It really, you will come off worse off. So anyway, I'm diverting. There's so much in my head that I want to get out there. So what was the first thing? There were just lots of things really, but I'll stick to the main things. We had a lovely trip in the UK. There's it's called Longleat Safari Park, and it's vast, and you've got every animal imaginable. We had a lovely day. Again, the charm was overwhelming, knowing that I like penguins and meerkats, and let's take your picture next to the penguins and the meerkats, and also with the narcissist, it's not so much that they want to do this nice thing for you, it's about how well did I do on this? Did I do good? And she would always be saying that. Did I do well? Was that good? Even putting up a picture or something. Is that where you want it? How well did I do? It's all about, score me on from 1 to 10 how well I did. So we'd had this lovely, I think it was 3 days away at Longleat Safari Park, and we came back. I came back to her place, and this person was very anti-Facebook. She just was, for whatever reason, and that's interesting for a narcissist to be anti-Facebook, because Facebook's a good platform to have selfies of yourself, and they love pictures of themselves, But for whatever, unless if you've got multiple personalities involved and you're different people, a different person for different people, Facebook may be something quite dangerous for a narcissist. There's always that. So I am on Facebook. So when we returned home, I asked her if she would kindly send me these lovely photos, email them to me. And she went very quiet. And this was not the joyous, jolly person that was, I had a brilliant time in Longleat with. And she just said, why do you want them? Is it to go on Facebook? And I said, well, no, I just to even print them off as hard copy. I don't, I have no problem. I would like to put them on Facebook, but if you are quite a private person, you don't want them on, that's fine. And she would not let me have them. I gave her my word that they would not go on Facebook, but she withheld them from me just to be mean. It was my punishment for existing on Facebook. That's the mentality of a narcissist. If you don't go their way, if you break their rules, they're going to punish you, and it's usually through a very ridiculous means. It is like a child throwing a temper tantrum. So that was one of the things. You're going to have to bear with me. I haven't even made notes for this because I am just in a real rant at the moment that I could easily take up 2 hours or do a 3-hour show. But so yeah, that was just one of the things. And then you're back to the charm. So there's like a little bit of you're in my black book, and then we're back to being charming again because she's got her own way now. So, okay, I have to accept. I won't be allowed these pictures. Good girl. Yeah, that's what it's about. Good girl. All throughout, there were lots of things where she was constantly critical. It could be about a bit of dust that's on a picture frame, that's on your plug socket. But a lot of it can be very hypocritical. So they can be, for instance, they can leave some food out on a table in the heat where flies are doing their business on the food, and that's perfectly acceptable. But there's a bit of dust on a plug socket, and that they will just have their own rules, and there will just be no rhyme nor reason. It's just, but they're my rules, and this is how it is, singing to their own hymn sheet, if you like. So there was all that, where you've got to just be doing things their way. Forget about the logic, has gone straight out the window. No logic with them. It's their rules. You abide by their rules or get out. So you can't even have a conversation with these people. It's impossible. They just cannot see reason. So, what was the next? Oh, they're just, there's so many things, but I'm just trying to highlight the most significant things. So, as I say, it wasn't very long. It was 3 months, but it was the longest 3 months of my life. This all came to blows when it was. I've already mentioned this in the previous show, but I will try and give it a little bit more detail because there wasn't much time spent on this. So, my friend, who I've known since 1988, we worked together in the first place I worked. It was her 52nd birthday party, and at a party, you're mingling, you're speaking to my friend's husband had passed away a couple of years earlier, so there were people that I knew at that birthday event that I knew by sight when Nikki and Stuart were, before Stuart had passed on. So there was, so, oh, hi, I remember you. How are you doing? How's life with you now? As it happens, a party, you do not sit. Well, it's a very insecure relationship if you have to sit right next to your partner all the time and you're not allowed to speak to anyone. That you're treading on eggshells with that sort of scenario. So we were at this birthday party, and for the first maybe hour, more than an hour, I was sat next to my partner. And then there was someone I recognised over the other side of the room, which took me to the other side of the room. He and his girlfriend, wife, whoever it was, got up to get some nibbles, and a young man came and sat next to me. This is a 2-seater settee. And he was talking to me, a lovely young chap, probably half my age, young enough to be my son. He was talking to me about his mental health issues. He had bipolar. And he was saying about, he has better days than others. And now, from what I understand about some mental health issues, I think it's something called grounding, where sometimes people would touch the person they're talking to. And there was nothing at all untoward in this. He touched me on the shoulder, and just as he was talking, and there was nothing sexual. The conversation wasn't sexual. The way he touched my shoulder wasn't sexual. It's not a sexual touch if someone touches you on the shoulder, for goodness sake. And my partner was sat opposite me, and she was giving me dagger looks. And I didn't know what was wrong because, you wouldn't think that would be a problem. As far as I was concerned, I was having a deep conversation with a stranger. That was it. So there seemed to be some problem with her. Before leaving the party, she wanted to speak to my friend's partner at the time and called him over. And there was clear... So people sense things at a party. When there's an event, people sense things. And she was basically soaking up the atmosphere because the attention was all being on her. What's up with... Got to be careful not to say her name. I don't want her to sue me. So I didn't realise that was the tactic, because a narcissist, it doesn't matter what kind of attention they get, as long as they're getting, preferably they want positive attention where they're wonderful and, look at me. And but if they can't get positive attention, they will want to get negative. Any attention is okay. So she was getting negative attention. We walked home from this event in silence. And I don't think I've taken the story anywhere from here. So apologies if I have already repeated myself too much. So we came home to my place, and there was a whole night's worth of punishment by silent treatment. Literally did not say a word. It was like I was invisible. There was nothing said to me. Now I'm quite placid. Well, I think I'm turning harder. I have to. But usually I'm quite a placid and soft person, and I'm someone who likes to sort a problem out. I've always been that way with friendships, family members, relationships. If someone's upset, I like to sort things out with that person. With a narcissist, you can't, because, as I say, that there is no rationality with them. It's just, you've had it now, you're the worst person on the planet, and it can just be disobeying their rules, as it was in this case. Fair enough if I'd done something wrong, if I'd flirted, if I'd cheated, then understandably your partner's upset. But you can't be, or it's unjustified to be upset because someone else has put his hand on your shoulder, and that's someone else doing that, and what that person's done isn't anything untoward. So the following morning, early, about 8 o'clock, it was a Saturday morning, must have woken the neighbours up. She went off into a massive rage, and how can you not be aware of someone inappropriately touching you? He had his hands all over you. He was playing with your hair for minutes at a time. He was playing with your hair for minutes at a time. Now, I was starting to question my ears at this point, because I think I would have noticed if someone was playing with my hair for minutes. That's a hell of a long time to be playing. For me to have sat there and not noticed. I mean, it's just barking mad. So I listened to all of this, and she was just shouting things that just were not true. I was now someone into threesomes. I've only ever had relationships. I've never even had a one-night stand. I'm just not that sort. I'm anti-sexual promiscuity. I hate anything that is not within the realms of a relationship. So I was a hussy, I was a slut, I was into threesomes, I was promiscuous, I was all these things that she clearly was just throwing at me because she didn't like me talking to someone else. Now I can see all that now. Coming out, looking in, from the outside looking in, you can see what that was about. At the time, and I need to toughen up, because I am not a good person for a narcissist, because I do tend to believe anything that I'm told. I'm my own worst enemy. I've always been a bit gullible. And so I started to wonder if I'd had an affair without even knowing it. Did I sit there and let someone have his hands all over me without knowing it? So that weekend I was basically, and this is going to make me sound so pathetic, I just spent the whole weekend, I didn't eat, I just lived on tea and coffee. I was in my bedroom. She was clearly upset, and I was just almost in a corner, I'm exaggerating now, but like the whole sort of, rocking, trying to work things out, going over things. Did this happen? Did that? What's that? Did he touch my hair? And I ended up, playing with my own hair and time myself for 20 seconds thinking, well, that was noticeable enough. I would have noticed if someone was playing. It's just ridiculous. So I found myself, through the friend whose birthday party it was, phoning complete strangers from the party. I mean, how embarrassing is that? How desperate was I to get to the truth? Did you see anything untoward? Did you see someone touch him? No one saw this. someone from the party said to me, oh, we're talking about your partner who's the professor. And I said, sorry? Your partner who's a professor? I said, no, she's not a professor. She's an admin assistant. Oh, so she said she was a professor. And I thought, oh, there was music playing. He must have heard wrong. So I just ignored that. And about 2 months after this, I had stinking emails, all this abuse about almost OCD. How can you not? You need to tell me one thing. You need to answer this. How can you not be aware? How can you not be aware of a man having his hands, she kept saying inappropriately touching you, inappropriately this, you've disrespected me, all this sort of stuff. Well, you can't answer a question that begins with how are you not aware, because the answer is you're not aware. It's a redundant question to start with. So, 2 months had passed, and I had exhausted myself answering trick questions about things that did not happen. You can't answer a question about things that haven't happened. It's like trying to answer why you're a hippopotamus. You can't answer it because you're not a hippopotamus. It's just ridiculous. But what narcissists do, if they don't like something, they just make something up about you from just anything. They just make up crazy things that just are complete rubbish. So, 2 months ago, it's a small world. God moves in mysterious ways. And I had a chance meeting with someone who was local, just for coffee. I certainly, at this point, I was not looking for another relationship. That was the last thing on my mind after this. I'll probably become a nun at some point. This person knew my ex. And, oh my Lord, by this time, I was gemmed up on gaslighting, which, as I've mentioned before, they try desperately to get you to believe things that just did not happen. Again, a form of punishment. And I was familiar about love bombing, where they lure you in, a bit like a child groomer. You know, he's going to say to the child, oh, I've got Haribo. I don't know if you have Haribos in the States. I think you do, don't you? Might even be American sweet candy, as you call it. A child groomer is going to say, I've got some lovely sweets in the car. Come in. Oh, it's starting to rain. Get in the car. He's not going to say, get in. And my ex was a bit like that. Grooming. So I'm losing my train of thought. So basically, I had a conversation. So I was gemmed up on gaslighting, love bombing. I knew what projection meant, but I didn't apply. So projection is when someone's doing something bad themselves, and rather than take responsibility for it, they point to the innocent party and say, you did it. They could go and rob a bank, and they could have a pair of tights over their head and walk in, and you could say, oh, have you just robbed a bank? No, you did. But they got no evidence for their claim. They just say, no, you did it. So I wasn't applying projection at this point. This person I spoke to filled me in that my ex-partner had been into the most disgusting, I don't want to sound like a prude, and if people are into things like open relationships or, threesomes or sexual promiscuity, each to their own, it's personally not for me. But my ex-partner had told certain people that she was into, I don't think I can say the word on air, F-buddies, friends with benefits. So, threesomes with a husband and wife. This person, incidentally, was very anti-men. Men were full of disease and germs and all this. By the way, just because I'm the other way inclined, I do love men. I love men as people. I wish I could fancy them, because I really do love men dearly. Women are just very troublesome in my experience. But this partner was like, she really didn't like men. All men cheated, and men were this and men were that. They were bad. So it had come out, it had come. I'm aware that time's going. That she was into all the things that she had accused me of, and I could not believe this. I now wanted questions answered, because during our time together, she had forced a sex act on me that was not consensual, and this made me very angry. I coped with this because I tried to blame it on her being broken and having a bad start in life, even though that did not excuse what she did. But when this all came out, that she had been doing the most disgusting things, and she also had an STI, and we're talking about an irreversible STI. And basically it's just putting me through hell. I now want questions answered. I want an opportunity to speak to this monster, this evil, evil person. And when the relationship finished, I was forbidden to ever use her name, because it's a rare name. I was forbidden to talk to anyone about the abuse which took place. I had to be hushed up. And I took the plunge soon after hearing this news, because this made the incident worse now. I could no longer just let go and let God. Justice now has to be taken. So I went to the police and I reported it. And I wasn't going to take this anymore. I could let it go so far and try and do the whole forgiveness bit without knowing the yucky stuff that went with it, because this was putting my bloody life at risk now. And wasn't going to stand for it. So I reported it to the police. The officer that I gave the details to was lovely. The same night, 2 police officers came to my house and they spent time with me. The main one taking the details. I was quite surprised, because he said, I don't really want to, I don't even know if it would be allowed to be aired, so I don't want to risk going into details what she did, but it was something that she should basically be locked up for. She knew what she was doing. She knew it was hurting me. And at the time I was awaiting a gynae procedure where things were more painful, and she was loving this. A narcissist needs to have one up on their victim. They just get a real thrill on one-upmanship. That's all it's about for them. So the police officer who was taking the details, he said to me, it's a grey area, because a female to female sexual assault doesn't class as rape. Apparently rape is just when there's a penis involved, which is, I think it's section 1 of the Sexual Offence Act. But what she did to me did fall under section 2 of the Sexual Offence Act. Now, this wasn't taken into consideration by the police. The officer said to me that if someone is telling making it known that the giver is hurting them, that's not necessarily an indication for the giver to stop. Now, Rape Crisis weren't too amused by this at all. I'm really surprised that the police didn't take it as... I don't want to badmouth the police because, you know, they are great. But I'm surprised they did not take it more seriously. So they said they would speak to her. I don't know whether they visited her or phoned her. And about a week later, I had a text saying, "Hi, Deborah, we have advised Jay accordingly. This matter will now be closed." And I'm thinking, but I'm left... You can never force someone to tell them. I mean, we're dealing with a habitual liar now. You know, you can't ever force someone to tell the truth. And I think, well, it's for support and trying to get as much information as I can about whether this thing is true or not. Because when you've got a pathological liar, you don't know where the lies lie. So she could have been lying about this filthy lifestyle to impress certain people, where she may have been honest with me, that she only did relationships and she was practically a virgin. That was the story I got. Or she could have been lying to me and being truthful about her this other life. I think sometimes a pathological liar is just because it's second nature to them. They're just lying constantly. I wonder if it gets to the point where they even believe their own lies. It must be a very dark existence for them. They can't be happy people. So I'm at the state now where I'm not leaving it here. Over my dead body, I am not leaving it here. I will get justice for this bloody monster. And so I'm trying to find a solicitor who will... I've never had to do this before. This is a new world for me. I've never had to deal with anything like this before. So I don't even know really where to take it. I'm just grasping at straws with anyone. Apparently mediation service is the other person has to be in agreement. You're not going to get this person in agreement because, you know, they just don't take responsibility for anything. The most evil thing, one of the most evil things is the control almost from beyond the grave, if you like, because if I don't know the procedure. As far as I know, you go through a solicitor, it then gets taken to court. I'm just assuming. But even then, if you've got, think about the implications with this. If you've got someone who just blatantly lies, what would stop that person turning round and saying, "Nah, she did it," or "But she's done this, she's done that," you know? And she's done this with so many people that there are other victims out there. I don't know if they've been victims of sexual assault from her, but certainly emotional abuse, and she's had people in tears. And honestly, I'm sure she would have been a tarantula in a former life. You know? People are just too scared of her to do anything. it's just unbelievable. This is a human being. Well, no, she's not. I'll take that back. She's not a human being. Yeah. So I'm in this position at the moment where, what do? I want to seek justice, but we're dealing with a charmer, a manipulator, who could turn everything around. And that in itself is very, can make you feel very scared and insecure. And what do? It's a hard one. But I wanted to share this because there's got to be more cases. Again, like I say, abuse is abuse, and it must be taken seriously. Whatever gender is, it's genderless. But I still think that the police would have taken it a lot more serious if this had been a man doing this to a woman. They've said there's lack of evidence, and I can kind of get that, because there are certain things that are done behind closed doors and it's just one person's word against the other. But I guess at the same time, I would imagine most sexual assaults don't have an audience, so I don't know. And I guess that's the key to having to report it soon after the incident. See, I didn't. If only this yucky stuff had come to light soon after we had finished, then I would have got things cracking sooner. But it didn't. It came to light a long time later. But I'm just hanging on with the hope, because you think of... I can mention crimes over here where, whether it's been certain celebrities that have been found guilty or murderers and stuff that you may not have heard of in the States. But it's been years later that people have... And sometimes it takes one person to report them, and then others kind of report it. And I will support anyone I get to hear of who is a victim of this person. I'm in contact with some people where we've shared similar horror stories. Are just unbelievable. I mean, if you could make a comedy out of this if it wasn't real. And we're sort of maybe keeping each other going by sharing sort of silly stories where the person's not just evil, but they're just completely daffy. My neighbours kindly did my garden. I'm sorry if I've repeated myself on a previous show. Yeah, they did my garden, they cleared it all, and she insisted that I report them because they've stolen my grass. I mean, that's the mind that is going to say that. I mean, I don't know how much dandelions are supposed to be worth, but it's just... and apparently she went to some Pride festival and she was in disguise because of all the people that would be fancying her. When you get to hear of stories like this, she's obviously a very sad and broken and sick individual. The lies have just been absolutely crazy. Others that I've spoken to have, she clearly just doesn't know fantasy from reality anymore. And as much as I'm trying to feel sorry for her, it worked to a degree prior to this news coming out. Do you know what? I can't feel sorry for her now, because if these things are true, she should have told me. And she would have known that she had this STI. The least I deserve is a conversation with my abuser. The police are not allowing this. And maybe the only way I can get what I need to seek justice is in the courtroom, where she won't be able to, she will have to learn how to address a question that's put to her. She won't just be allowed to just point at me and say she's a liar, or she's the girl with nits, or she smells, you know. She will have to learn how to address a conversation. She won't be allowed to just run away. But I just, yeah, you know what I was thinking when a little while ago, I was, I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but she's not going to do that to me. But I was at the point of wanting to not be here anymore. I was having nightmares about this, and I think suicide is a very not an advisable thing to do. It's a very brave thing to do. It's, you know, when people say it's the easy way out, it's no, it's not, because it's the biggest decision you would ever make. But no, she's not going to bring me down that low. There will be an answer. There will be a way. I will get closure, and I will get the justice that I deserve. And I think when I'm over this and when I'm stronger, I'm trying to think of things to keep me going in this and keep me above things in this. And I feel I would like to sort of start, I don't know how, it's just a dream at the moment, but I would like to start some sort of support for women who have been abused by women. Because, yeah, until I spoke to Nancy, I'd never come across it. I don't think I've never come across it in adult to adult relationships, female to female relationships. So, but it must happen. If it's happened to me, I can't believe I'm the only one it's happened to. You know. So, yeah, I just want to say that if anyone, again, irrespective of gender, if you've been or are being abused, and even if it's emotionally, it may not necessarily be physically or sexually. Mine started with emotional abuse that I never, ever would have imagined to result into a sexual assault. You just don't think of that from a woman. You just, you know, women are gentle. Women are, you know, they're nice. At least we think. But yeah, listen for the red flags. If you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, well, maybe you don't realise you are. But sometimes, as with myself, you can just get a sort of hint of, oh, that feels a little bit controlling. You know, I don't feel very good about this. Don't be afraid to challenge someone right at the start, in the early days, even if you think you're being petty, because that's what happened with me. I just thought, well, no, I can't say anything because it looks like I don't want to, you know, I don't want to create a scene. But even if something doesn't feel right, there's nothing wrong with expressing why. And it's best to nip things in the bud before. And also, the sooner you get a reaction over what you've brought to their attention, the better, because if they are going to be all narky about it, then, you know, see ya. Or if they're apologetic and want to talk with you, then great. But you can tell when it's a narcissist because they're never wrong about anything and they will never have a conversation about it. It's just you who's to blame. And so that's the easiest way, I think, of knowing that they're narcissistic. But yeah, so I just want you to look after yourselves and protect yourselves, and there'll be I'll make sure there's a couple of links to helplines or organisations helping people who are in domestically abusive relationships, or even if sometimes you're not actually that sure if you are, again because of the control, and you can be programmed and easily. I was a robot all the time I was with her. I was just this robot, and they take away yourself. But these helplines are very good in even asking if it sounds like, if you're unsure, just to ask if it sounds like you are in a domestically abusive relationship. Because when it's a physically abusive relationship, there's no question, is there? A punch is right. There's no grey area. I've been punched. Or a sexual assault. There's no grey area. You've been sexually assaulted. But when it's emotional abuse, it's so subtle that it's harder to detect. So yeah, I would encourage you to turn to a friend, or both a friend and an organisation that specialises in that. And usually helpers are former victims, so they know, they're quite wise as to what qualifies as domestic abuse. And so anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope this doesn't happen to anyone that's tuning in. If anyone has had this sort of thing, please don't be afraid to drop me an email, because I would be interested in hearing about your scenario. And also, I would personally like to offer anyone help. I would be more than willing to offer my help to, just if it's advice, any wisdom I can supply, or an ear. Sometimes an ear is all we need. But yeah, do get in touch with me. That, as I say, there'll be some links to places to get help. Okay, thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, lots of love and God bless. Stay safe.